ॐ सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं कर्वावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। Okay, so we look at the Shanti mantra. So let's chant them together. By now you should be familiar with it. So Om Bhadram Karunebhih Shrunuyam Devaः Bhadram Pashyema Akshadhiryajtraः Sthirairangai Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuः Swasti na Indro Vridhashavaः Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaः Swasti nastarsho Arishtaneemiः Swasti no Brahaspatirdadhatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now we'll go to the chanting of the second khanda, first chapter, second section. Tadetat satyam mantreshu karmani kavayo
Tadetat satyam mantreshu karmani kavayo
yanya pashyantani tretayam bahuda santatani
Jnane pashyantani tretayam bahuda santatani
tan yacharatha niyatam satyakamaha
Tanyacharataniyatam satyakamaha
Eshavah pantha sukritasya loke
Eshava pantha sukritasya loke
Yada lelayate hyarchihi samidhe havyavahane
Yada lelayate harchihi samidhe havyavahane
Tadajya bhagavantarena ahutih pratipadayet
Tadajya bhagavantarena ahuti pratipadaye
Yasya agnihotrama darshama paurnamasam
Yasya agnihotram adarsham apaurnamasam
Achaturmasyam anagrayanam athitivarjitam cha
Achaturmasyam anagrayanam atitivarjitam cha
Ahutam avaishvadevam avidinahutam
Ahutam
avaishvadevam
avidinahutam
Asaptamamstasya lokan hinasti
Asaptamamstasya lokan hinasti
Kali karali cha manojavacha
Kali karali cha manojavacha
Sulohita yacha sudhumravarna
Sulohita yacha sudhumravarna
Pulingani vishwaruchi cha devi
Spulini vishwaruchi cha devi
Lelayamana iti saptajihvaha
Lelayamana iti saptajihvaha
Eteshu yascharate bhrajamaneshu
Eteshu yascharate bhrajamaneshu
Yatha kalam chahutayo hyadadayan
Yatha kalam chahutayo hyadadayan
Tam nyantyeta suryasya rashmayaha
तं यन्तेता सूर्यस्य रश्मयः
यत्र देवानां पतिरेकोऽधिवासः
यत्र देवानां पतिरेकोऽधिवासः
एह्येहि तमाहुतयः सुवर्चसः
एह्येहि तमाहुतयस्तु वर्चसः
सूर्यस्य रश्मिभिर्यजमानं वहन्ति
सूर्यस्य रश्मिभिर्यजमानं वहन्ति
प्रियां वाचम् अभिवदन्तयोर्च्यन्त्यः
प्रियां वाचम् अभिवदन्तयोर्चयन्त्यः
एष वः पुण्यसुकृतो ब्रह्मलोके
एष वः पुण्यसुकृतो ब्रह्मलोके
प्रवाह्येते अधृढा यज्ञरूपाः
प्लवाह्येते अद्रडा यज्ञरूपाः
अष्टादशोक्तम् अवरं येषु कर्म
अष्टादशोकम्
अवरं येषु कर्म
एतच्छ्रेयो यभिनन्दन्ति मूढाः
एतच्छ्रेयो येऽभिनन्दन्ति मूढाः
जरामृत्युं ते पुनरेवापि यन्ति
जरामृत्युं ते पुनरेवाप्यन्ति
अविद्यायाम् अन्तरे वर्तमानाः
अविद्यायाम् अन्तरे वर्तमानाः
स्वयं धीराः पण्डितं मन्यमानाः
स्वयं धीराः पण्डितं मन्यमानाः
जगन्यमानाः पर्यन्ति मूढा
जगन्यमानाः पर्यन्ति मूढाः
अन्धेनैव नियमाना यथान्धाः
अन्धेनैव नियमाना यथान्धाः
अविद्यायां बहुधा वर्तमानाः
अविद्यायां बहुधा वर्तमानाः
वयं कृतार्था इत्यभिमन्यन्ति बालाः
वयं कृतार्था इत्यभिमन्यन्ति बालाः
यत् कर्मिणो न प्रवेदयन्ति रागात्
यत् कर्मिणो न प्रवेदयन्ति रागात्
तेनातुराः क्षीणलोकाश्च्यवन्ते
तेनातुराः क्षीणलोकाश्च्यवन्ते
इष्टापूर्तं मन्यमाना वरिष्ठम्
इष्टापूर्तं मन्यमाना वरिष्ठम्
नान्यच्छ्रेयो वेदयन्ते प्रमूढाः
नान्यच्छ्रेयो वेदयन्ते प्रमूढाः
नाकस्य पृष्ठे ते सुकृतेऽनुभूत्वा
नाकस्य पृष्ठे ते सुकृतेऽनुभूत्वा
इमं लोकं हीनतरं वा विशन्ति
इमं लोकं हीनतरं वा विशन्ति
तपश्रद्धेये ह्युपवसन्त्यरण्ये
तपश्रद्धे ये वसन्त्यरण्ये
शान्ता विद्वांसो भैक्षचर्यां चरन्तः
शान्ता विद्वांसो भैक्षचर्यां चरन्तः
सूर्यद्वारेण ते विरजाः प्रयान्ति
सूर्यद्वारेण ते विरजाः पैरान्ति
यत्रामृतः स पुरुषो ह्यव्ययात्मा
यत्रामृतः पुरुषो ह्यव्ययात्मा
परीक्ष्य लोकान् कर्मचितान् ब्राह्मणः
परीक्ष्य लोकान् कर्मचितान् ब्राह्मणाः
निर्वेदमाया नास्त्य कृतः कृतेन
निर्वेदं माया नास्ति कृतेन
तद्विज्ञानार्थं स गुरुमेवाभिगच्छेत्।
तद्विज्ञानार्थं स
ज्ञानार्थं स
गुरुमेवाभिगच्छेत्
गुरुमेवाभिगच्छेत्
समित्पानिश्रोत्रियं ब्रह्मनिष्ठम्
समित्पाणिश्रोत्रियं
समित्प्रियं
ब्रह्मनिष्ठम्
ब्रह्मनिष्ठम्
तस्मै स विद्वान् उपसन्नाय सम्यक्
तस्मै
तस्मै
स
स विद्वानुपसन्नाय
विद्वानुपसन्नाय सम्यक्
प्रशान्तचित्ताय शमन्विताय
प्रशान्तचित्ताय
शमान्विताय
शमान्विताय
येनाक्षरं पुरुषं वेद सत्यम्
येनाक्षरं पुरुषं
येनाक्षरं
वेद
पुरुषं वेद
सत्यम्
सत्यम्
प्रोवाच तां तत्त्वतो ब्रह्मविद्याम्
प्रोवाच तां तत्त्वतो
तत्त्वतो
ब्रह्मविद्याम्
ब्रह्मविद्याम्
इति प्रथममुण्डके द्वितीयखण्डः
इति प्रथममुण्डके द्वितीयखण्डः
Okay, so I'll just mute you all. Right, so we had finished the 8th mantra in this section, and now we look at the 9th mantra, which is Avidyayam Bahuda Vartamanaha Vayam Kritartha iti Abhimanyanti. So iti Abhimanyanti Balaha Yat Karmino na Pravedayanti Ragat Tena Turaha Kshina Loka Shyavanti. This is the mantra. Look at the word meanings. Avidyayam. In the ways of avidya, in the many ways which avidya shows, bahuda vartamanaha. So bahuda means many. Vartamana refers to, because there is a they call visarga over there. Vartamana refers to beings who are there in the present. So many living beings. Vayam kritartha iti abhimanyanti. Vayam means we. Kritartha means we have. So if you look at the word kritartha, it is krit plus artha. So artha referring to purushartha, krita meaning having completed. So vayam kritartha iti abhimanyanti. They think that we have done all that is necessary to complete the 4 goals, the 4 purushartha, which includes moksha also. Then balaha, children. Yat is because karmino means men who are attached to rituals. The karmino has to be converted into karminaha for the purpose of sandhi breakup. Karminaha means people who are used to doing karma. Na pravedayanti. They do not understand, they do not achieve jnanam. Why? Because of ragat, because of the attachment. And tena, because of that, aturaha, these people are dejected. Sheena lokaha, when the punyam is exhausted, chivante, they fall down. So in English, absorbed in the ways, in the products of avidya, these people are like children who think that they have gained the final goal. But because they have got raga, they never really attain jnanam. And therefore, when the punyam of their good deeds are exhausted, they fall back into samsara. A very important verse. What is being pointed out is the transition from aparavidya to paravidya. And we referred in the last verse to the blind leading the blind. And therefore, if the people who are being led are steeped in avidya, they are blind. What is being said is that at least the leader should have got eyes. But the problem is what? The blind person does not know whether his teacher or his guide is blind or not. So how would I know that the person who is going to teach me is well versed in the Vedas? How to find a teacher? So here, of course, we say that finding a proper teacher, finding a proper guru heavily depends upon prarabdha karma, or what we call Ishvara Kripa, the grace of the Lord. All we can do is to make the effort and make the proper effort. So in Rishikesh, for example, just outside Rishikesh, on the way to Tarkashi, there is a spa. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's a very famous spa. And one of the things available in the spa is a Vedanta class. Okay, the spa advertises saying Vedanta is available. So this, can you imagine the scenario? You are having a massage over there and the teacher is teaching. So the teacher is teaching a person who's having a massage. So Acharya is saying that all these people, they are subject to various kinds of confusion. And therefore he says, avidyayam bahuda vartamana. All these vartamana, all these current jivas, bahuda avidyayam, various types of avidya they have, various wrong notions they have about what? Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. And also about moksha, and also about the discipline, the sadhana needed for moksha. So you will find people saying that moksha is going to Vaikuntha and serving the Lord. And other people will say that so many numbers of kriya if you do, you will get moksha. And third person will say that raising kundalani to the Sahasra Chakra, that is moksha. So people hold on to various types of ideas. People say through bhakti you get moksha, through Raja Yoga you get moksha, through Kundalini Yoga you get moksha. There are all sort of various types of wrong ideas. And all these people, they don't know that the ideas are wrong, and therefore vayam pratarthaha. They all think we are fulfilled. We have completed all the purusharthas. So we have purnatvam. Now the problem which we all know is that when punyam is manifesting, things will go very well for me. But punyam manifestation will not go on for long. And therefore I should be prepared that someday the punyam will be exhausted and papam will manifest. Papam will fructify. But these people don't understand that. And therefore, yatharthaha. They are complete, they are fulfilled, they are satisfied. Iti abhimanyanti. In this way they think, which is a false thinking. And therefore only balaha. Therefore only balaha, next word, which is immature thinking. Right? Balaha is an immature person. Why is he immature? Because he doesn't understand. Because of his obsession with karma. Their entire life is lived in avidya. And therefore, yat karminaha. That person is a karminaha because he engages in rituals all the time. And na pravedayanti raga. Even then, he doesn't understand the truth. He doesn't understand that rituals cannot give him moksha because rituals are finite and moksha is infinite. He doesn't understand that finite sadhana can never give you infinite sadhya. So, na pravedayanti ragat. Why? Because of ragat. The attachment to the karma phalam makes them blind to the truth. They do not understand the possibility of moksha as a goal because of their attachment to all the lower goals. Right? All Maya, of course, is very attractive. So we say that in a beauty competition between Brahman and Maya, who will win? Obviously, Maya will win. No. Shastra says, don't be obsessed with Maya. Use Maya for entertainment. Use Maya for your relaxation. But Maya cannot be a permanent goal because it cannot provide you stability, which only Brahman has. Therefore, hold on to Brahman and enjoy the arrival and departure of Maya. The enjoyment of Maya without attachment. That itself is moksha. If you can enjoy the world, but without being attached to it, that is moksha. It's like you go to Rishikesh and opposite Paramath Ashram, there's a flowing Ganga, right? At that place, the Ganga is very strong in its flow. And many people want to enjoy that flow. So you step into it. But it is possible for you to enjoy the flow only if there is no danger to you. only if the flow does not carry you away. And therefore you have these big rods in the bank onto which chains are attached, and therefore you hold on to the chain and then you enjoy the flow of the water. You can even let your legs go off the ground, and then you float in the water. You feel the pull of the Ganga, the current, but you know you are safe because your hand is firmly clutching on to the chain. So that is called enjoyment of Maya without the danger of Maya taking you away. And that chain for you is Brahman. If I'm holding on to Brahman, anxiety and stress will never be there, because I know that what I'm holding on to is stable. It will never let me down. And therefore he says, Tena Turaha. So two words, Tena Aturaha. Because of that. Because of that, why? What? Because of what? Because of the fact that they are holding on to finite things, these people, he says Aturaha. So Aturaha is a word which is defined by Shankara as Dukkharthaha Santaha. Means a person who is going to be afflicted by Dukkham in the future. Dukkham by sorrow in the future. Because you are holding on to that Sakama Karma, there will be a constant source of dissatisfaction. And even though they have done lots of good karma, that punyam will not give a permanent phalam, will not give a permanent karma phalam. They may go to Swarga. So that itself is a good phalam, right? You have gone to Swarga. But he says, Shine lokaha chyavante. So lokaha here means karma phalam. What is the derivation? Because it is punyam, which is a karma phalam, which takes you to that loka. And therefore in Shastra you will find that very often loka is used as another name for punya karma phalam or karma phalam itself. So lokaha karma phalam. Shine lokaha means shine karma phalam, shine punyam. So after the punyam was exhausted, chyavante. Chyavante means he will leave, he actually meaning falls. So falls from Swargaloka, and falling will be where? Either back to Bhuloka, which is this Prithvi, or to the lower worlds he goes. Okay. Now we look at the 10th mantra. So Ishtapurtam Manyamana Varishtham. Nanya Chreyo Vedayanti Pramudaha Nakasya Prishte Te Sukrute Anubhutva. So the avagraha has to be dropped over there. Sukrute Anubhutva Imam Lokam Hinataram Va Vishanti. Okay. Now look at the words. I'll first give the brief meanings and then we'll discuss. Ishtha Purtam. Ritual acts for satisfaction of desires. Manyamana. Having understood. Varishtham. Superior, most important. Then Nanyat Shreyo. That is to be broken up. Na Anyat Shreyaha. Nothing else is Shreya. Nothing else is a higher goal. Vedayante. They think. Pramudaha. Ignorant people. Then Nakasya Prishte. So Nakasya Prishte basically means Swarga. A very interesting derivation of how that is, that we will come to. Te, those people. Sukrute Anubhutva. Having enjoyed the punyam, imam lokan, hinataram vishanti. So that you have to break up into imam lokam vishanti va hinataram lokan vishanti. So that you have to break up and supply the vishanti twice. Imam lokam vishanti va hinataram lokan vishanti. So these ignorant people, thinking that these rituals are very important, don't know any other way. and therefore they enjoy the pleasures of Swargaloka, and once again they enter into this Bhuloka, human loka, or even the lower worlds. Brief English translation. Now let's look in detail. So this mantra is criticizing people who are addicted to only karma. So look at the word Ishtha Purtam. Okay. Ishtha here has to be understood carefully. It is not from the dhatu ish, which means to like. That the root is not ish, the root is yaj. Yaj means to worship. So Ishtha, Ishtham means that which is worshipped. And Vedic rituals are divided according to the source. So there are Vedic rituals which are specifically mentioned in the Veda itself, like Agnihotra. So they are called Shrauta Karma. You should remember these names. Okay, Shrauta Karmani. Shrauta Karmani means rituals mentioned in the Vedas, in the primary Vedas, Karma Kanda portion. Then there's something called Smartha Karmani. These are also rituals, but they are not mentioned in the Vedas. They are mentioned in the Smritis. And these two together are called Purtam. The rituals mentioned in Shrauta Karma or mentioned in Smartha Karma. So many varieties of activities are prescribed by Smriti, and many varieties of activities are prescribed by Shrauta. So Shrauta Karma is referred to here as Ishtham, and something called Purta Karma is defined as Purtam over here. So activities which are enjoined for the purpose of worship, Sandhya Vandanam, all these activities are enjoined by the Vedas. They are called Ishtham over here. And there are varieties of activities which are not specifically mentioned in the Veda, but they are mentioned in the subsidiary texts like Puranas, like Manusmriti, and all these people. They are not activities directly connected to worship. They are activities which are connected with social activities like constructing temples, digging wells, providing food to the needy. One can modernize this list. The hospitals, schools, building old age homes, putting up an umbrella for traffic policemen. You can think of anything which is in the form of a social outreach, where the primary focus is on the benefit of others. That is Purtam. Okay, the Smartha Karma, which are the karmas mandated in Smriti, and the examples of that are these, which I just mentioned: constructing temples, digging wells, putting up shelters. So Smartha Karma is not dealing with worship. Shrauta Karma deals with worship. So Shrauta Karma is called Ishtham over here. Smartha Karma is called Purtam. And therefore activities which involve the worship of the Lord enjoined by Veda, Karma Kanda, is Shrauta Karma, also called Ishtham. Activities for social benefit enjoined by Smritis, like constructing temples, digging wells, which are meant for benefit of society, they are called Purtam over here. So Ishtha Purtam, both these karmas. Therefore, these are people. Ishtha Purtam is the sum totality of the mandates given in the Vedas, the Shruti, as well as in the Smriti. And he's saying there are people who are addicted to these kind of activities. But the main idea behind these people doing these activities is not for Chitta Shuddhi, but for propagating their name in society. for gaining fame, that he's a great person. Okay, so such people are being talked about here in this particular mantra. Those people who do all the activities which come in Vedas, the Shrauta karma and the Smarta karma, Ishtapurtam. But the foundation of the activity, the very reason why they do, is not for spiritual growth. It is for name and fame. And therefore, here the Smriti says, the Veda says, Manyamana Varishtham. They think that these are the superior activities. And therefore, the Upanishad calls them Pramudha. So Mudha is a fool. The pra stands for Prakarshena. So Prakarshena Mudha, outstanding fools, the most excellent among fools. So Pramudha, such people who use the Veda to propagate their own name and fame instead of using it for the purpose for which it is meant, which was Chitta Shuddhi. The Veda criticizes, saying they are Prakarshena Mudaha, they are outstanding fools, they are Pramudaha. Why? Because na anyat shreyaha vedayante. They do not understand anything superior to what they are doing. They don't understand that whatever they are doing will not give them moksha. Okay. You might think that Ishtapurta karma is being criticized here. No. They are all good actions. Okay, they are all enjoined in the Vedas. But they are all in the nature of, ultimately the nature of karma yoga. And what is the purpose of karma yoga? Chitta Shuddhi only. You should not consider them as jnanam, activities meant for jnanam, for moksha. That is what is being told over here. And he says, Nakasya prishte te. So te nakasya prishte. Shankara doesn't comment upon the word nakasya. I think he thinks we are all so advanced Sanskrit students that we don't need to be told. So we have to look elsewhere. And when Shankara doesn't comment, Bhashyakara doesn't comment, luckily for us, there are Tikakaras. So there is somebody called Anandagiri who has written a Tika. A commentary on a Bhashyam is called a Tika. And he says, he gives a very beautiful definition. He says, Kam Sukham na bhavati. So Kam is, it's not the English Kam, okay? Kam is Ka with Anusura on top. Kam is equal to Sukham. So Kam na bhavati means, Sukham na bhavati means where there is no happiness. That place is called Akam. We have to follow this argument. It's a bit grammatic, but it is interesting in the way of how this thing is being derived. So Kam na bhavati means Sukham na bhavati. There, in that place where there is no pleasure, iti akam. That place is called akam, which means akam he defines as dukham. So the place where there is no sorrow, where there is no pleasure, that place is obviously a place where there is sorrow. So kam sukham na bhavati iti akam dukham. That place is called akam. So first he defines the word akam. So akam means a place where there is only sorrow, and nakam. So tanna vidyate, where this dukkham is not there, yasmin asau nakaha. That place is called nakaha. So he defines nakaha like something like holding his nose by putting his hand around the head. Okay, that place where there is no pleasure is called a place where there is sorrow. So akam. That place which is in which there is no akam, that place is called na akam. So nakaha means a place where there is no dukham, which is what? A place where there is sukham, which is what? Swarga. So nakaha means swarga. So this nakasya prishtete, such people will go to swarga. So swarga is being indicated here in a generic capacity. It means all the worlds up to, not including Brahmaloka. So we should know what these worlds are, right? How many worlds are there supposed to be?
7.
Anybody else?
14.
14 worlds. Can you name them? Anybody? Okay,
भूः भुवः भुवः महः जनः तपः सत्यं
great. That is the higher lokas. That is, you have named how many?
7
7. And the lower?
अतल वितल सुतल महातल रसातल talatala and patala.
Very good. So I'll repeat them once again. From the bottom, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Rasatala, Talatala, Mahatala, Patala. That is the bottom worlds, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Then there is the 8th one, which is Bhuloka. It's our loka. And then Bhuvaloka, Suvaloka, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, or Satyaloka is also called Brahmaloka. Okay. So here he is saying that this Swarga has to be taken as up to what? Tapoloka, not including Brahmaloka. So the Ishtapurtam activities can take you to either Bhuloka or Bhuvaloka or Suvaloka or Mahaloka or Janaloka or Tapaloka, but not to Brahmaloka. Because to go to Brahmaloka, pure karma is not sufficient. And this we saw in which chapter in Bhagavad Gita? We saw somewhere.
8th.
8th
Eighth.
chapter. So you have to have what to go to Brahmaloka?
Upasana.
You have to have Upasana also. Either karma samuchya Upasana, that is karma with Upasana, or only Upasana is required to go to Brahmaloka. Okay. Having gone to these lokas, these 6 lokas, which are not including Brahmaloka, what happens? Sukrute anubhutva. Sukrute means the fruits of good actions. Sukarma, fruits of sukarma, good actions, is Sukrate, which is Punyam. So having enjoyed the fruits of Punyam, what happens? Imam lokam hinataram va vishanti. So I told you, break that up. Imam lokam vishanti. They will come back to Imam loka, to this Bhuloka, to this Prithvi they will come back. Or hinataram va. Hinataram lok, or that is va hinataram lokam vishanti. They can come back to a lower janma, a lower loka also. Okay, hinataram. So this is a reference to, animal. So the word here is tira. The tira is, if you look at the Sanskrit word for tiryang, there's a word called tiryang, which basically means animal. But literally, tiryang means that which grows sideways and not vertically like a human. So only humans they have taken as growing vertically. All other beings, beings in the sense, they are taking it as animals. Okay, now you are not to say that, okay, what about trees? They also grow. That is all there. So I'm just explaining that tiryang is a reference to animal which grows horizontally. And therefore, hinam lokam va imam lokam va hinataram means they can either go to the human womb, that is the Manushya Yoni, or they can go to animal Yoni, or even less than that. Okay. So Shankara, you have to look at Shankara for the clarification of this. Shankara gives a very good clarification. He says, this, you have to rewrite this whole sentence as hinataram is equal to tiryanga va narakadi lakshadam. Either to tiryanga, animal body, or narakadi. So narakadi is all the lower worlds you can go, which includes plants and trees and amoeba and whatnot. Okay. And how will you go? Is that random? He says no. Yatha karma shesham. In accordance with your sanchita karma only. You will never know what is going to come. the net effect of this is to say that even if you go to Swarga, even if you go to the next highest loka below Brahma Loka, remember in all these 6 lokas, apart from Brahma Loka, there is no chance to get jnana. And therefore, only in Brahma Loka, there is a possibility that you will go and get Krama Mukti. In all other lokas, you have to come back when the punyam is exhausted. So all other lokas combined can be taken as Swarga itself, even though Swarga Loka is one of those lokas. So once all that punyam is exhausted, you don't know which way you are going. Whether you are coming back to a human body or to an animal body, or even worse. One never knows what is going to come because karma shesham, what is leftover karma, you don't know. And that is why the best option for an intelligent person is to look into Shastram for a method of destroying the Sanchita completely. Okay, let me stop here in case any questions are there. All right. I hope you guys are all revising your the classes so far before you come to a class, because unlike Bhagavad Gita, unless you are keeping in mind all the previous classes, the later classes become difficult, and therefore at least you must know what we have done so far in terms of the Vedanta. I mean, we have Upanishad itself. All the classes you have to revise, and then only this full benefit of the succeeding classes are available. So no questions.
I have a question, but I don't know if it's very relevant. But I just wonder how these karma kanda people don't get a doubt on what they do. Like, I mean, there are so many different karmas prescribed, like Agnihotra and Sandhyavandan. If we take even the Smritis now, as you mentioned, there'll be like hundreds of karmas, and it's not possible to accommodate them all in a day if somebody is very serious like that and rigid. It's not possible. And then also there are words like Kshina Loka and all mentioned here. How do those people not get a doubt, or how do they interpret?
They don't think that, like if you remember Upadesha Saram, for them there is a big difference from the rest. The Purvamimamsikas, they do not believe in Ishvara. They believe that karma itself gives the results, and therefore they continue to do karma.
But when a word like Kshina Loka comes, which very clearly says that an impermanent world, or
yes, so they probably, they can interpret it differently, because unless you believe in the concept of mithya and satyam, you can give any number of interpretations you want, and therefore, since they are completely stuck in that karma kanda, they never bother to look beyond. That's why he says now they believe they have attained moksha through these only, because karma kanda says that through rituals alone you can get your highest object. But as Shankara says somewhere else, the highest objective of karma kanda is not moksha, it is chitta shuddhi. That is what these people don't understand. They misinterpret the word highest, purushartha as moksha.
so. For example, if a word like pramudha come, actually the sentence criticizing those people who do it for fame or something. So then they interpret like that.
They will interpret, and they say we are going to do it only for our own, what do you call, to go to heaven. To go to heaven, we'll get the punyam out of it. I won't do it for fame.
Okay.
Unless you have accepted the possibility of, you being wrong, it doesn't happen, right?
Yes.
It is normal for you to try to fit all interpretations into your worldview.
It just seems like they have to reject a great many number of things to maintain or hold on to their view. They're not able to accommodate many things.
See, that's why it's important to do the bhashyams. If you are interested in knowing these kind of stuff, whenever we do the bhashyams, really do the bhashyams, you'll understand, because Shankara discusses again and again and again on these things. especially in Brahma Sutras. That's a bit far away, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now we will go to the 11th mantra. So this says tapashraddheye upavasantaranye shanta vidvamso bhaikshcharyam charantaha surya dwarena te virajaha prayanti yatra mrataha sapurusho hyavyayatma. So again, I'll give you simply the words first. Tapashraddhe, austerity and devoted worship. Ye, he, upavasanti, those people who live where aranya, in forests. Aranyam is a forest. And shantaha, peaceful, vidvamsaha, learned, bhaikshcharyam, a life of asking for bhiksha, charantaha, they move about. And surya dwarena, through the door, through the path of Surya, they, those people, virajaha. Rajaha here is referring to Rajas. So virajaha, without vina rajas. Rajas is impurity. So virajaha means who are rid of all impurities. Prayanti, they enter. Where do they enter? Yatra amritaha, that place which is immortal. Sapurushaha avyayatma, that place, that person who is indeed unchangeable. So, in simple English, those people who perform austerity with faith, living in the forest, having sense control, being learned, and living on alms, on bhiksha, they, you have to add here, okay, after the death of the physical body, they go through the path of the sun. Where do they go to? To that place where the immortal and unchangeable Purusha is. So it's not sufficient just to have a lot of powers, okay? So we see that, you know, in the Puranas or even in the movie serials, you see that Indra, who is the king of the Devas, in spite of being the most powerful Deva, is the most insecure person. Whenever anybody tries to, you know, or is succeeding in getting a lot of punyam, Indra feels insecure. Why does he feel insecure? It's a very important question. Why does Indra feel insecure if somebody is in long tapas and acquiring a lot of punyam?
Yes, because the Indra can change. If somebody gains more punya,
Yes,
he can
Indra is a
be Indra.
temporary post. Right? Indra is a post. It's a designation. King of the gods, a designation. And therefore, somebody acquires a lot of punyam in the next cycle of the universe, it can be another Indra. And therefore, that Indra tries all his best to sabotage all the efforts of the sadhaka. Right? So, what he's saying is that even this Indra, who is so powerful, he is unsecular. Why? Because it is basically anatma only. All this is part of samsara. Samsara is not life on earth. Samsara is all the lokas, including Brahmaloka. So only in a place which is not temporary can there be complete security. And that is Brahman only. Because Brahman is the only entity which is outside the 14 lokas. So for Brahman, the question of insecurity is not there. Therefore, for us, when we say that, we mean that in moksha, the question of insecurity is not there. So until the last verse, we talked about aparavidya, right, in the form of karma. Now, remember, aparavidya is not just karma. Upasana is also aparavidya. And therefore, in this verse, Shruti now talks about upasana, also apara vidya, but upasana. Earlier on, it was all karma. Okay. Upasana is also a form of karma. What is the difference? In karma, it is kaika karma, kaika vyapara, as they call it, activity with the body. That is called karma. Or even vachika karma, activity with the mouth, the tongue, like japa, parayanam. These are all karma, right? They are not upasana. Any activity through the body, using the body parts, or even using your power of speech, it is called karma only. But when the same chanting, the same japa, the same parayanam is done without moving the tongue, then this karma is called upasana. Manasika activity is called upasana. Mental activity is called upasana. So there is a pecking order, right? In terms of benefits, first, the highest benefit is to mental activity, manasika, then to vachika, then to kaika. And Vedas prescribe, the Karma Kanda prescribes a lot of upasanas. And for practicing all these upasanas, there is a prescribed lifestyle. What is the lifestyle for the Vedic seeker? In Brahmacharya ashram, you study scriptures, you learn the theory also, you understand the meaning also, you do the parayanam also. In Grahastha ashram, I follow Karma Yoga. In Vanaprastha ashram, I follow Upasana Yoga. In Sannyasa ashram, I follow Jnana Yoga. This is the general understanding. But you have studied the scriptures in Brahmacharya ashram also. You are thoroughly familiar with Jnana Yoga. So the only thing is, when I say in Grahastha ashram, I follow Karma Yoga, the understanding is because Grahastha ashram has a lot of duties. It is predominantly Karma Yoga oriented. Because I may not have yet achieved Chitta Shuddhi, but I already know the scriptures. So Grahastha ashram is predominantly Karma Yoga oriented. Vanaprastha is predominantly Upasana Yoga oriented. And Sannyasa ashram is predominantly Jnana Yoga oriented. So this 11th mantra, it talks about Upasana and Vanaprastha. Okay. Now, it's interesting to note that there is only this one mantra about Upasana. There are a lot of mantras about karma. There is one mantra about Upasana. Okay. Now this Mundaka Upanishad, is it a mantra Upanishad or is it a Brahmana Upanishad?
Brahmana Upanishad.
Mantropadesha.
You should call for a vote. What is it, Brahmana or Mantra Upanishad? All the learned people, please tell. I had specifically mentioned this in the beginning classes. It is a Mantra Upanishad. In the tradition, there are some things called the Brahmana Upanishads also. Now you will find that sometimes Mantra Upanishad has got another Upanishad as the commentary. So in this case, for example, Mundaka Upanishad is a comment, is the Upanishad, the Mantra Upanishad. And there is an Upanishad called the Prashna Upanishad, which is a Brahmana Upanishad, which is a commentary on Mantra Upanishad. Okay. So because you are not finding much of Upasana over here, this Prashna Upanishad has two full khandas, which are devoted to Upasana. And therefore, in our study, we'll often come across this. There is one Upanishad which is talking about a certain thing. There are a lot of clarifications, extra information given about the same subjects appearing in this Upanishad in another Upanishad. So we have Prashna Upanishad also, which we will do in due course. And therefore here, the 11th mantra talks only about Upasana. And basically it is talking about Vanaprastha only. Upasana also is divided into Sakama Upasana and Nishkama Upasana. I'm using all these Sanskrit words because I believe we are all familiar with them. If anybody doesn't understand, please ask, okay? What is the purpose of Sakama Upasana? Not Sakama Karma, Sakama Upasana. It is for the purpose of improving your standard of living. And in terms of the Punyam generation between Sakama Upasana and Sakama Karma, Sakama Upasana gives more Punyam than Sakama Karma because Upasana is a tougher job. Because the mind is a more subtle instrument. So chanting for 5 minutes with the voice, verbal chanting is easier, but chanting even for 2 minutes mentally is much more difficult because the mind gets distracted more easily. And therefore, since the effort involved in Upasana is more than the effort involved in Karma, Shastram says that the Punyam which comes out of Upasana is more than Karma. And therefore, Sakama Upasaka will go to a world which is superior to Swargaloka. And that world is called Brahmaloka, also called Satyaloka. So here, in terms of, well, activities involving pleasure, the pleasures available in Brahmaloka are superior to Swargaloka. And that's why more Punyam is necessary in terms of the Upasana required. Okay. Now what happens when a person who is Karminaha in the words of this Upanishad and a person who is Upasaka, when they die, what happens? The Sakama Karmi goes to Swargaloka. Sakama Upasaka goes to Brahmaloka. By Upasaka or Karmi, I mean the subtle body, the Jiva in terms of Sukshma Shariram, okay, blessed with consciousness. What happens to Sthula Shariram? It will go back to Panchabhutanis. It will be burnt. What about Atma? Atma does not travel. What travels? Sukshma Karana Shariram Chaitanya Sahitam. That is the Sukshma and Karana Shariram blessed with consciousness, which we call RC, the astral body, subtle body, that is what travels. The primary component, we say, are prana and mind, and this mixture is called Jivatma. The primary mixture here is Jivatma. Of course, when it gets a physical body, it is still called Jivatma. The only difference is the Jivatma without the physical body cannot exhaust karma or generate karma. You require a physical body for both. How do they leave when the physical body dies? The Shastram says this Jivatma, it leaves the physical body, and according to its karmas, it goes either to the lower lokas or back to this loka or to Swarga or to Brahma loka. How do they leave? Vedas declare, and some Upanishad we will see, that we have nadis in the body. Right? There's a Katho Upanishad which describes this. All these nadis are said to originate from the heart and travel to the different peripheries, different directions, to different ends of the body. And the passage of the jiva, when the physical body dies, is through one of these nadis. Okay, there's no real translation possible for a nadi, so I'm leaving it as nadi. People will say astral channels and all those things. I really don't know what it means, so we'll just leave the nadi as nadi. So that nadi, through that nadi, the jiva will go out. Which nadi will depend upon his karma. So you can go out through the Brahmadwaram is the top of the ladder. That is for the person who's going to Brahmaloka. or you can go through some other nadi if your karma is inferior. So having gone out of this nadi, the jiva has to travel. And this traveling has two paths. What are they?
Shukla and Krishna Gati.
Shukla Gati and Krishna Gati. Okay. So Krishna Gati takes you where?
Sargaloka.
Krishna Gati takes you to Swargaloka. And Shukla Gati takes you to Brahmaloka. And it's only in Brahmaloka that you can achieve Krama Mukti. Therefore, Shukla Gati, you can get Krama Mukti. And so he says, Vidvamsaha, people who practice Upasana. And where do they live? Aranye Upavasanti. They live in secluded forests. And hence their mind is Shantam. So they live in the Aranyam or the Vanam. So these people are also called Vanins, people who live in the Vanam. So Vanam here, Shri Sankara, is a Upalakshanam, a generic term meaning any place where you can be away from the hustle and bustle of your activity. Right? In today's world, Shankara, of course, will strongly disagree. In today's world, we can take it as having withdrawn from your grahastha life, having handed over your responsibilities, and even if you have one small room where you spend most of your time, that itself is called Vanaprastha for us. That is a forest for us. And SPG says that such a person, a Vanaprasthi, has reduced four important aspects which are present in a grahastha. So in a grahastha, there are four important duties or aspects. One of them is possessions. The second one is obligatory duties, mandated duties according to your position as a grahastha. The third one is relationships with your husband, with your wife, with your children, with your in-laws. And the fourth one is transactions. So PORT. Possessions, obligatory duties, relationships, and transactions. These four are very important for a grahastha. These four define a grahastha. And the Vanaprastha has to reduce these. So port reduction is being a Vanaprastha. Okay. So look at the words tapaha shraddheye hi upavasanti aranye. What does he do? Upavasanti aranye. He stays in the forest. And what does he do in the forest? Tapashraddhe. He is engaged in tapaha and shraddha. Now, both these words do not have the meaning of the dictionary. Tapaha here means karma which is required to be followed in the ashram mandated by you, by your own ashrama. In whichever ashrama you belong to, the karma that is mandated by that ashram, by being in the ashram, you have to follow. So for grahastha, there is tapaha. Vanaprastha, there is tapaha. For sannyasa, there is tapaha. There is specific karma, nitya karmas applicable to each of these ashramas. That is what is meant by tapaha over here. And shraddha always means devotion, but here it is a different meaning. Shraddha here means upasana. And what kind of upasana? Shankara clarifies. Hiranya Garbhadi Vishaya Vidya. The upasana of Hiranya Garbha, otherwise called Lord Brahmaji, otherwise called Saguna Ishvara. Maya Sahita Saguna Ishvara. So this Vanaprasthi has to be engaged in upasana. That is what he means by Shraddha over here. So their life is predominantly oriented towards worshipping Saguna Ishvara. They have, of course, withdrawn. As I said, port has been withdrawn, port has been reduced. So family engagements have been reduced. And the life has been committed to religion mostly. And therefore, Shanta Vidvamsaha. So two words, Shanta. their mind is calm, resolved mind, a low FIR in our terms. And Vidvamsaha, they have acquired Shastra knowledge. Remember here, since they are doing Upasana, this knowledge can refer to Karma Kanda knowledge. Why? Because the use of the word Shanta indicates Chitta Shuddhi. So they have lived a life of Karma Yoga as mandated in Karma Kanda, and therefore Shantaha. Chitta Shuddhi they have got. Shankara defines very clearly. He says, this Shanta means he uses a particular compound word. Uparata Karana Gramaha. So Karanam is what? What is Karanam?
Instruments.
In this case,
Ears.
no, not yet. That is
All the
Karanam is the Upalakshanam for the entire. Karanam basically
Indriya.
means instruments. So sense organs,
sense organs.
your Indriyas. Grama means what? Gram.
Village.
Okay, so for it to make sense in this context of Karana Gram, what should it be? You have to learn how to extract the meaning. Gramam means a village. Village is what? A group of people. Therefore, Karana Grama means the group of Karanam, group of your sense organs. And Uparataha means what? You should know that anyway. Uparata has come out. When did you come out of the word Uparata? No? You haven't heard the word Uparata?
Tattva.
In the Gita, it means to rob away, to steal, to be robbed of.
No, that is Apaharata.
Mhm.
The Uparata is
Uparamaha or Uparati from Shad,
Uparama, Uparati. Where it-
from
from the
Shamadhi.
Shamadhi. So Uparata means withdrawn. And therefore Uparata Karana Gramaha means having withdrawn the group of Indriyas. So this is the meaning of the word Shanta. It's a beautiful way of explaining the word Shanta. The person who has withdrawn all his Indriyas from the external world, he is a Shanta person. The person who has reduced all his PORT. He is leading a quiet life. And therefore, he can embrace sannyasa. Okay. So that's called Vividisha Sannyasa. We discussed this in Bhagavad Gita, I think, early chapters. Vividisha Sannyasa means renunciation with the desire of acquiring knowledge. So Veditum Ichha is Vividisha, the desire to know. So Vividisha Sannyasa is a person who becomes sannyasi. He is not a jnani. He is a ajnani, but he is interested in Shastram. He wants to acquire knowledge. He has the discrimination to know what he wants, and therefore he takes sannyasa to fulfill his ambition. Such a person is called Vividisha Sannyasa. Okay. While on the subject of sannyasa, we must also remember the other type of sannyasis. So one is Vividisha Sannyasa, the person who takes sannyasa with the express, purpose of following jnanam only, to fulfill his desire to acquire jnanam and then get moksha. Then there is another sannyasa called Vidvat Sannyasa. The person Vidvat was already got Vidya, right? So because he has got Vidya already, what is his purpose in life? There is nothing more to be gained or done in this world. Therefore, he takes sannyasa because of that knowledge. The first person, the Vividisha takes sannyasa for knowledge. The Vidvat takes sannyasa because of the fact that he's a jnani. So that will make him totally free of the duties of all the ashramas. So he can opt for that. Then there is another one, Apat Sannyasa. Apat is, in Hindi, it is Afat. What is afat?
Problem.
Afat. So apata sannyasa is here. It means a sannyasa taken in anticipation of your dying. Here, I mean, it's there is scripture, so I'm telling you. Okay, it says that if you have not become a sannyasi and you have a very strong ambition for, you know, jnanam, and you have not jnanam, you have not got jnanam at all, for whatever reasons. Either you're not studied, or you're not given the opportunity, or you have studied and you have not yet completed. And yet, when the danger of death is there, you don't want to die a grihastha, right? So this is particular type of sannyasa where no guru is required to give diksha and all that. At the time of death or before you die, you simply have to declare your intention that you are now a sannyasi. So that's the apata sannyasi, which means that you have died a sannyasi, and hopefully you will become a sannyasi in the next birth and fulfill your requirement for jnanam and moksha. And there's a very famous story which indicates this apata sannyasa. The story of Shankara. You know that, right? You guys? How did Shankara become a sannyasi?
He was about to be taken away by crocodile when he was taking a bath in the river.
Yeah. So Shankara wanted to be a sannyasi, and his mother did not allow it. Okay. Now that is another thing, that if you want to become a sannyasi, you have to get the permission of those people who are dependent upon you. Otherwise, the guru will not give sannyasi. So his mother didn't give. So one day he was having a bath, and the crocodile caught hold of his leg and was dragging him to the water. And then his mother was screaming, and he told his mother, Amma, you give me permission. The moment you give me permission, this crocodile will let go of my leg. So, apata sannyasa. Sannyasi in terms of danger. And his mother said, okay, you become a sannyasi. I give you permission. And he declared that I'm a sannyasi. And the crocodile went away. Don't ask me why and how. Maybe he doesn't like sannyasi flesh. Okay, so that is apata sannyasa. And of course, there is something which we call antara sannyasa, internal sannyasa, which is the name of a particular chapter in the Gita also. Jnana karma sannyasa. A jnani who has not formally taken vows of sannyasa, but he is a sannyasi because of what? There is deha abhimana tyagaha. He has renounced the identification with the body, leading to the renunciation of all, worries, and therefore is free from the world. Such a person is called antara sannyasa. Okay, let's come back to our vanaprastha. This vanaprastha, what do they do? Bhaiksha charyam charanta. He goes and begs for food. He goes for bhiksha. So it should be noted here that for bhiksha, you need not be a sannyasi, right? You can be a vanaprasthi also who has not taken sannyasa. So vanin, you can be a vanaprasthi also not taken sannyasa. He also is eligible for bhiksha in accordance with the old tradition. And since he has taken to this life for jnanam, Shankara says, vidvamsaha grahastascha. He is a grahastha, but jnana pradhana. He is a person who for whom jnanam is prominent in his life, and therefore he is a vidvamsa. Vidvamsa, he says, can be a grahastha, but because Shankara is very clear about this, because he has renounced all possessions, he has become eligible for bhiksha. And on that respect, at least, he is on par with the sannyas. So in Vanaprastha ashram, like in sannyasa ashram, rituals are not there. Most of the sadhanas are in the form of japa and parayana. Why? Because neither the Vanaprasthi nor the sannyasi has any money. They are not well off, right? They live day to day. And for all sort of japa and rituals, materials are required. So for any japa and parayanam, materials are not required. But for any archana, for any puja, any havan, you require materials. And they don't have the resources for that. And therefore, they do predominantly japa and parayana. Okay. So what happens to them after they die? He says, Surya dwarena te virajaha. So virajaha, free of rajas, they go through prayanti. Surya dwarena prayanti. They travel by the Shukla Gatihi. This travel leads to Brahmalokaha. And the Surya dwarena is referred to in a couple of other Upanishads also. Their path is said to be through the sun. Now this word viraja, free of rajas, basically means free of the effects of karma, which is punyam and papam. But Shankara adds over here that why does Shankara feel the need to clarify this word? Can you guess? Viraja means free of rajas. Rajas means karma. Karma means punya papa. But Shankara wants to add something. Why does he want to add? If you have been following the argument so far, you should know. What is he saying? He goes through Suryadwara, he goes to Brahmaloka. And he adds Virajaha. These people are free from karma effects. They are free from punyam and papa.
Not to be confused with having tamas.
No. How do you go? Who goes through Shuklagati? Who goes to Shuklagati?
Samuchya Upasana.
Upasana. What does Upasana give you?
Vikshep Nivritti.
No, that is the Drishtafalam. I'm talking about Adrishtaphalam.
Chitta Shuddhi Punyam.
Chitta Shuddhi.
Punyam. Chitta Shuddhi is Drishtaphalam. Chitta Shuddhi is not Adrishtaphalam. Upasana gives two phalams always, like any other karma, right? One is Drishta, one is Adrishta. The Drishta phalam is Chitta Shuddhi. The Adrishta phalam is Punyam. And the travel through Brahmaloka is because of Punyam. We said, right? You need more Punyam by way of Upasana. Pure karmis who also generate Punyam cannot travel. And therefore it should strike you as a contradiction, no? When the mantra says Virajaha, Virajaha doesn't mean free from Papa only. Virajaha means Vina Rajas, without the effects, the products of Rajas. Rajas, the product is what? Karma. What is karma phalam? Punyam and papam, both. So when you say Virajaha, you are saying free of Punyam and papam both. And the question is, if he's free of Punyam, how is he traveling through Shuklagati? Right? And that is why Shankara feels the need to clarify. He says, you can say that he's almost free, he says. Eva, he uses the word Eva. Because to travel to Shuklagati, it is the Punyam which is carrying. And the Punyam has to be there. Okay. And here, of course, Shankara adds one very clear note saying that Surya Gati is taken to be generic usage for Uttarayana, the bright path to Shukla Gati. And who is there in that destination in Brahmaloka? Yatra Amritaha Sapurushaha Hi Avyayatma. That person who is eternal and unchangeable. Amrita Purushaha Avyayam Atma. Unchangeable, permanent person. And who is that? Hiranyagarbha. To that Hiranyagarbha, whose nature is eternal and immortal, this person, he travels. Do you find any contradiction there also? Eternal and immortal. He is going to Brahmaloka. Because Shankara adds a note. No?
Well, that's the Kramamukti part of it, right? Going there, it's kind of provisional. That once he's going to go there, he is going to gain that knowledge from.
Agreed. No, this is a different. I'm talking about he's giving a definition to Brahmaloka. Okay, he says Brahmaloka is that place where Hiranyagarbha is found. And that Hiranyagarbha, he says, is Nitya Amritaha. He says, exact words here, Amritaha Avyayaha, unchangeable and immortal.
When the loka itself is impermanent, how can a Hiranyagarbha who lives in that loka be permanent?
Exactly. That's why Shankara says, Yavat Samsara Sthai. That Amritam has to be understood as Yavat Samsara Sthai. As long as Brahmaloka remains, as long as Samsara remains, the universe exists. That long, he is immortal. He does not die in between. But Brahmaji was first born, and therefore he has to die. He cannot be immortal. Okay. What is the big disadvantage of this upasana? You to go to Brahmaloka, all prescribed karma, all prescribed upasana. Remember, it's a material benefit. And in terms of karma kanda rules, for material benefits to come out of any karma, every rule has to be followed. It's very difficult. And in spite of that, it is Brahmaloka. There is a possibility of return, right? And does going to Brahmaloka automatically mean moksha? No. Shankara says even Hiranyagarbha is within samsara. It is a goal attained within time and therefore parichinnaha. Therefore, it is not eternal. And Shankara says one more thing. Right now, what are we talking about? Right now, we are talking about what? The Upanishad has used two words, Amritaha and Avyaya. Unchangeable, eternal. But Shankara says this is not correct. Because what? If the jiva is mortal, then he has to travel to some place and to merge. If you are saying that moksha is infinite, where is the question of travel? Because infinite is there everywhere. And if I am jiva and I am taking, okay, I am not infinite, I am finite. But if I have to travel somewhere, then obviously I am outside of that place to where I am traveling. You understand? If I am finite and I have to travel to reach my destination, it is not I only who am finite. The destination is also finite because I am away from the destination. But if I am inside of infinity, if I am inside of the definition of that infinite place, then I'm already there. Where is the question of going through Shuklagati or otherwise? Is the question. So he says there is no travel at all involved. And you must understand that this entire discussion is about karma only. Only Apara Vidya is being discussed. Moksha discussion has not yet begun. Because if Apara Vidya can give you moksha, later on, why should there be a discussion on Brahma Vidya? So Shankara points out that this is the Apara Vidya topic which was being discussed. And he gives a very, very beautiful summary of the topic. So he says in one line, he says all Apara Vidya products, which is what Anatma, all Apara Vidya is Anatma, can be categorized as Sadhya, Sadhanam, either the means or the end. But all these, they are Dvaitam indeed. And what is the highest form of Dvaitam? He says, Yat Hiranyagarbha Praptam Avasanam. The highest karma phalam ends here with Brahmaloka. And therefore, Brahmaloka is not moksha. Because Brahmaloka is also samsara. And Shankara quotes Manusmriti to give you a definition of samsara. Manusmriti says, Thavaradhyam, beginning with the plant, a non-moving living being, up to Virat, up to Lord Yama, up to Hiranyagarbha, indeed up to the Karana Prapancham, up to Maya itself, all these are within samsara only. And apart, all these are the highest goals available to a samsari. Because upasana is sattvika guna pradhanam. It is focused completely on sattvika guna. And therefore, the highest goal available to upasaka is Brahma Loka, which is again within samsara only. All this is within samsara only. And Shankara says you cannot take any other interpretation here because the discussion on moksha has not yet begun. Discussion is all about apara vidya only. So with this, we'll stop for the day.
Acharya, I have a very silly little question.
No, silly. Your question is silly.
So, no, it is very silly just to understand Amritam and Avyayam.
Avyayam.
Avyayam part. So the Amritam, okay, so you know, it has been clarified that it is provisional in the sense that as long as the universe is standing, and
Yeah.
the lifespan is still then, and therefore immortal, and in that sense, as long as the universe is standing. The Avyayam part, however, it is not that Brahmaji does not change, right? Because he's shown as an old man, which means that he must have been young at some point in time.
Yeah, so it's a relative avyayam, relative to us. We change in 100 years. Brahmaji changes in probably, a few 100,000 years.
Is there, so it's not Avyayam.
Yeah, that's not avyayam. It's all relative only. The entire universe is relative only. So anything which is in terms of immortality or non-changeability has to be relative only. So relative in terms of relative to us. And therefore Amritam is also in terms of a longer life than we have.
Yes.
So unchangeable in comparison to our changes, Brahmaji changes less. See, we are going into a lot of karma kanda, okay? But ultimately, you have to understand that karma kanda is being negated.
The limitations of it are being shown at the
The
end.
limitations are being shown. So the next verse, in fact, is very, pointed verse at this. He says, after examination of all this, then you arrive at a particular, conclusion. That is in the next verse. One of the most important verses in the Mundaka is the next verse. Very often quoted by Shankara. Okay, tell me how are you guys, dealing with the sudden change from Bhagavad Gita to Upanishads?
This is altogether in a different plane.
No, I think the Bhagavad Gita has prepared everybody for this, Acharya, because without that, this probably wouldn't have been understood.
That's why I said Bhagavad Gita has to be thoroughly assimilated before this is done.
Otherwise, there's a lot of scope for misinterpretation and getting stuck somewhere.
Of everything, yes.
And then whatever the questions arise, one can always go back to understanding it from the Gita itself.
Yeah. In fact, everything here is already there in the Gita. So, in fact, here also you see Shukla Gati and Krishna Gati have been talked about very briefly. In Prashna Upanishad, you will find a lot of detail on Krishna Gati and Shukla Gati. And Upasana. So, ultimately, when you've finished the major Upanishads, at least 8, 9 of them, things will be much, much, much more clear.
It's very interesting, Acharya, to, from whatever you say, it seems like the different Upanishads, expand on various ideas of whatever lies in samsara.
Yeah.
But and as many things of samsara as there are, there's that much expansion of them. But the one thing that remains the same is the same in all of them.
The same in all of them. That is the Tatparya. See, that's how you arrive at Tatparya. The Tatparyam is that which is repeated a number of times without any change. So if you look at all the Upanishads, in fact, the Srishti Prakaranam itself, the method of creation, the process of creation is different in different Upanishads, which shows what? It is not primary. And therefore they treat it differently. But Brahma Satyam Jagan, Brahma Satyam is always the same everywhere.
The mithya part is mithya.
Mithya part is mithya only. In fact, you will see that Isha Upanishad is a very small little Upanishad, right? But the commentary on that is, you know which Upanishad? Brihadaranyaka, which is the largest Upanishad.
The Brihadaranyaka is a commentary on Ishavasya Upanishad.
Yes, like Prashna is a commentary on Mundaka, the Brihadaranyaka is a commentary on Isha.
Right.
So Brihadaranyaka is a Brahmana Upanishad, Isha is a Mantra Upanishad. Okay, with this we'll stop for the day. Thank you so much. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you guys.
Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you.